I've gone underwater with great white sharks in cages. I've stalked lions on foot. I've faced guns twice. I've never felt anything as scary as not being able to breathe.
Three years ago, my mother was diagnosed with IPF. It was very difficult for our family because this was a vibrant, healthy, active woman who essentially gets pretty much a death sentence.
My father had pulmonary fibrosis. I had seen him going downhill. He was on oxygen all the time. He was in a wheelchair. I saw him die of it. So when I was told I had it, I knew exactly what this was all about.
The hardest part, we have 3 kids, and calling them up and saying, I have this disease, and it's progressive, there's no cure, and I was given 3 to 5 years to live.
Well, I mean, when I think about my grandmother, I always just think about being at the cottage with her, you know, taking us to the beach in the summer, all those kinds of things. So she was awesome.
I play ice hockey, and my dad was the manager of my team for many, many years. That was a really big part of my life and always a big part of our life together.
He played soccer with me, hockey with me, baseball with me. He would be faster than me, and then suddenly his breathing slowed down. He started coughing, having trouble going upstairs. He needed oxygen to get from the car to the house.
There were times where his breathing almost seemed to stop for a couple seconds.
Slowly but surely, there was, you know, a lot of coughing, whether she was at the dinner table or just speaking, and, you know, that cough would get kind of aggressive at times, and I think that's when we could, you know, start to tell that you know, this was getting a little bit worse.
You could tell from her face that she was hiding it. You could see her doing the breath and then turning away from us so that maybe we didn't see it.
I loved sports, I loved sailing, and was a phys ed teacher, so I could do all those things, and all of a sudden I couldn't even lift the sail on the boat.
A real small incline, just like that, going uphill, as opposed to flatter downhill. It started becoming incredibly difficult walking up a street with an incline.
The smallest things for him became the biggest things. And that was really tough to see, to watch him go through that, because the struggle for him was even more than it was for us. Even though we had more responsibility, just him not having the responsibility was tough for him.
See your wife, you know, shoveling snow when you can't, and your sense of usefulness diminishes.
What we struggle with more is the knowledge of how IPF can end. You know, it's a really tough ending, and to think that you just have so much trouble breathing.
I got pneumonia on top of my pulmonary fibrosis. It's a real recipe for a disaster. My breathing was getting harder and harder, and I had oxygen, but I still was struggling to breathe.
He's fearless in many ways. So when he was scared, I was scared, and I got on the phone and I called 911.
I didn't want to go to the hospital. I began to think, okay, I'd overreacted. Finally, my son came in the room. I guess he'd been just outside listening to everything. He came in the room and said, look, he said, you always wanted to see your grandchildren. And he said, if you do, you better go now.
Seeing him still, seeing him hooked up to a machine so he couldn't move, was terrifying.
There was a 2-day period in there waiting. And the whole time, my son was sitting there, holding my hand, and he's just nodding like this, nodding beatifically, and I'm like going, this is wild. Because basically his eyes are just saying, it's gonna be fine, you're gonna be fine. He was acting as a caregiver with me the way I had with my father.
We knew that the only way for Rob to survive at a point was for him to receive a set of lungs.
He was about as sick as they get. Our average wait time for a lung is in the 3 to 5 months range. Getting a lung within 2 days is really luck.
I remember saying when they brought the forms, does this mean the lungs are here? And he said, yeah, and we're pretty sure it's going to be fine.
My name was submitted for a lung transplant, and I said, you know, I am 73 years old, or will be, and I've lived a pretty good life, and if some 20-year-old kid wants it, I'm not going to take that away from them.
That's not an option to a 78-year-old, 79-year-old. I don't think she was going to be a recipient of a double lung transplant. So we just kind of accepted that, and you just move on, which is essentially what my mother, you know, has done.
Since I was a kid, I wanted to live to be 100. That was always my goal, a big, nice, fat, round number, right? But it's really just an expression of how much I love life. I feel lucky because I know I was that close to dying. It all worked out. It's a miracle.
I'm somewhat frightened of not being able to breathe, and what that does to your body, and what it does to your head. The brain is a funny thing. It causes you to think of all kinds of things you don't want to think of. Like, what is it like really dying? What is it like lying in bed, not being able to do anything? And so that's a frightening prospect. But that's sometime down the road. So today is today, and each month is another month. And I'll live it that way.